Good morning. We have been hearing a lot about the foreign policy of US, which the critics assume that Donald Trump is changing. Quite possible he is changing. But then let's talk about the parameters of foreign policy. Is foreign policy something that is written in stone, not to be altered? Is it an oracle from Delphi? What I mean is a divine ordination, a divine command that is inalterable. If that was so, then there would have been no wars, because people would have originally thought of being closed within themselves. And once an enemy would have always remained an enemy. By that connotation, Germany and USA would have been enemies. Germany and England, France and England, England and Spain, USA and Japan would always have remained enemies. But it is not so. By that connotation, China and India would have remained friends. Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, if you remember. Indians and Chinese are brothers of 1960s. That is not so. Foreign policy is dictated by the needs of the country and its perceived benefits. And it's not only other countries which change their policy as per the need. Even USA has changed its foreign policy many times. Imagine, right from 1948 to 1971, USA did not accept China, and it was only dealing with Taiwan as the representative of China, just a small, tiny island. Even the UN seat in the Security Council was occupied by Taiwan. And all of a sudden in 1970s, Nixon made a U-turn and became a Sino lover, a Chinese lover. The policy changed diametrically 180 degrees turn. Till the First World War, USA was an isolationist country. They had no connection with the global world at all. And then Woodrow Wilson participated in the First World War. But the impact of isolation was so much that the Senate did not permit USA to become a part of League of Nations. Nevertheless, the seed had been planted. It flowered at a time of Roosevelt, then the Marshall Plan, and then the global leadership, and USA became a global leader. So if it began as an isolationist country, became a global leader, and now wants to withdraw in its shell, what's wrong with that? Coming to India, it was very friendly with China, no? Then an enemy of China. It was friendly with Russia, and then in the time of other government, Janata government became very friendly to USA, then again to Russia, then again to USA, and now it is maintaining an equilibrium. There was a time when Afghanistan and India were at doldrums, when Taliban were ruling Afghanistan, and then they became the best of the friends. Egypt and Israel, Jordan and Israel, they had outforced Israel. And yet Egypt and Jordan signed peace agreements with Israel. History is replete with such things. Second World War, the sworn enemies of USA was Germany and Japan. USA had imprisoned, like Canada had done, all the Japanese, people of the Japanese origin living in that country. And now they're the best of the friends. And this is because the economic parameters dictate the foreign policy. It's the needs of the country, both actual and perceived needs, that dictate the foreign policy. And it's not something which is eternal. In this world, there are no permanent enemies and there are no permanent friends. And to criticize Donald Trump for that reason that he desires to change the policy is an absolutely unacceptable thesis. Now imagine that your needs are better served to promote a policy where your industry grows. And for that purpose, you want to ensure peace. So, adopt a friendly attitude towards a country which can be a thorn in your side. And Russia is that thorn. So if Donald Trump wanted to be friendly with Russia, there's nothing wrong with that. And you also want to avoid more debts. USA has more than $13 trillion of debts. And majority of that is because of its commitment to declare and wage wars without any reason. If it's not in NATO, it would not have been responding to the wars in Middle East, in Afghanistan and Africa. If it was not fond of empty glamour, it would not be subsidizing United Nations and a host of other useless organizations. So when Donald Trump said that NATO needs to be changed economically, it was an economic consideration and the need to reduce the national debt that was crippling and is crippling United States. It was not born out of enmity. It was born of the self-interest, the interest of the nation, the interest of the country. That being so, the desire of any executive is always there to ensure that the country progresses. And hence, the policies are adopted. And that's not only with the change of the government, it happens. The same government can change its policies. Nixon was the vice president, and in the first 2 years of his presidentship also, he was openly avowing that Taiwan is the real China, that they will not accept the communist China. And yet, in a period of 6 months, he turned turtle. He absolutely made a 180-degree turn and left Taiwan in lurch. Then again, look at Iran. Shah was a friend of Iran. He had never done anything against Iran. And it was CIA which toppled the government of Iran and got Shah dethroned. That was not only a betrayal of the moral principle, but also the worst policy of changing sides where you ditch your friend. Hosni Mubarak, the darling of USA, was thrown to dogs by Obama administration. So to say that Donald Trump is changing the policy, yes, he is. But he is not doing something unusual. He is not doing something to the contrary. Look at India. There was a time when the banding principle, the principle of Panchi, were the guiding principles. But 1962 war made India change those principles. And the same India that said we will not interfere in the affairs of the others, and the same Jawaharlal Nehru who said that they will not use force to free Goa, used the army to capture Goa. Though it was a part of India, that's something different. But the use of force which had been abjured was adopted. Then Sikkim was annexed as a province of India. Was those actions not indicative of the change of policy? India sent then again under Rajiv Gandhi army to Malay when there was a coup over there, Maldives. Why? Because President Gafoor was a friend and they interfered in the internal affairs of that country so that the sphere of influence is not reduced. In Sri Lanka, IPKF was sent against all norms. Javardhan never wanted IPKF, but to show that India is a big brother in South Asia, Rajiv sent IPKF, and that resulted in the killing of Rajiv Gandhi ultimately, and alienated Tamils over there and Sinhalese. Both the parties were alienated. That was a mistake, of course, but there was a change in the foreign policy. Russia, very close to India and very close to China, and yet when the 62 war took place, it said, India is a friend but China is a brother, so we will support China. Again, when Mrs. Gandhi signed an agreement, it became very friendly to India. But recently, in the last few months, we have changed Russia, changing tax, and is now friendly to Pakistan. So much so that it has joined military maneuvers, military exercises along with Pakistan. Look at UK. Didn't want to join European Union, then begged to join European Union, and now Brexit. Is not the change of the foreign policy? So show me a single country in the world which ever had a consistent, continuous policy that only favored only one country and was against the other country. Show me a single country. We talk of Canada and USA. But were they always as friendly as today? There was a time when the US armies invaded Canada. It came up to Toronto, burned the fort of York. York is the present Toronto. You know, at that time it was called York. Devastated the whole land. So they were enemies at that time. And if the situation arises tomorrow, you can be sure USA is not going to think twice before invading if it is in their national interest. So it's a self-interest, it's a national interest which guides a nation's foreign policy. It's not something ordained by gods. It's not a biblical command. It's not a Quranic injunction. That what once the leaders thought would be applicable and enforced. Policies are meant for the people and for the governments and for the countries. Governments and the countries and the people are not meant for policies. The criticism of Donald Trump for this reason is absolutely unacceptable, because in his perception the change of the policy is required. And let's not forget, he is the chief executive. And as a chief executive and being POTUS, it's his responsibility. It's none of the responsibilities of the protest groups are the goons of Obama and Democratic Party to decide. If he thinks that abortion is not proper and takes steps to that within the ambit of law, it's his right. If he doesn't want to support terrorist organizations like Muslim Brotherhood, it's his right. So, it's not only the foreign policy, but it's a domestic policy as well. Every policy, whether it's domestic or foreign, every policy, whether it's economic or political or military, is dictated and decided by the perception of the leaders at that time. They are aware of the various parameters that decide the policy. It can be wrong. I'm not saying that perceptions would always be right. Chamberlain's foreign policy was to accept the power of Hitler, and he accepted and agreed to rape of Czechoslovakia. Churchill would never have done so. And it was found that the policy of Chamberlain was not appropriate, and he was removed. And Churchill came into power. But that was a time for war. But still, before being removed, it was proved beyond doubt that his policies were wrong. Here is a guy who is yet to implement his policies. And we are crying wolf because of the self-interest of the opponents. They are not nationalistic in character. Their attitude is to criticize, not for the sake of criticism, and to devalue the administration. And that is not acceptable. Any policy, domestic, foreign, economic, military, would always be decided by the parameters of the needs of time, the prevailing political economic situation, and the prospects of these situations changing in the future. Taking all that into consideration are the policies decided, and they are not decided as per the desires of the anchors and the hosts of biased, dishonest media. Thank you.